Hey everyone, it's Jamafu, and today is another day of Identity Demystified, where we teach you the steps for finding your identity in Christ. In this lesson, I'm going to be teaching you the major influences that shape your perception about who you are as a person. If you missed the first lesson, you can go to motivatedtoinspire.com/training, click on Identity Demystified, and you can get the first video lesson. Today, in this 6 video lesson series, where we teach you about finding your identity in Christ, we are on step 2, which is identifying the influences that shape your identity. And here's a quote by Stephen Kendrick from his book titled Defined: Who God Says You Are. To use a sports analogy, a person who doesn't understand his or her true identity is like a football player who doesn't know his position or what team he's on. You can imagine the number of people that go through life that way, not knowing why they do what they do, or what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. As we mentioned in the first lesson, such people never do anything meaningful in life, and they tend to be miserable most of the time. Media in its various forms is probably one of the biggest influences in society, particularly on the young generation. If you look at this picture, for example, it's the kind of picture you would find on Facebook with a caption that says, "Living my best life now," or something along those lines. This creates a phenomenon called FOMO, or fear of missing out. And if you're not privileged enough to be in a nice place like that, all of a sudden you start feeling like you're doing nothing with your life. Next thing, you start doing whatever it takes to be like them. The people you spend most of your time with have a strong influence on how you think about life and the decisions you make. Different ideas come up about what's important and what isn't. Some peer groups are positive, while others are negative. Family backgrounds are highly influential as well. If you come from a family where no one has ever gone to college, for example, it's easy to think that you can never make it, even if you wanted to. It may almost feel like an insurmountable mountain. Your ethnicity can easily put you in a position of advantage or disadvantage, depending on where you are and what you want to do. Unfortunately, this world is messed up like that, and therefore some people will value or devalue themselves based on the color of their skin. Where you come from has perceived advantages and disadvantages. Generalizations are often made of people based on where they live or where they come from. For example, for everyone from a first world country lives like a king, or people from third world countries are poor and struggling in life. That is not always the case, but generally this is what people think. And feelings have a way of getting the better of people, in some cases with terrible results. They are powerful communicators. They let us know, and others, when we are happy, sad, angry, depressed, etc. They are constantly changing and can easily influence the way we see ourselves. The things you have been through up to this point in your life tend to influence your perspective about what the future holds. For example, if you've struggled for your livelihood, you might think that is how it will always be until you die. Or if you have experienced failure for the longest times, it might appear as if you are destined to fail for eternity. All these are a flawed basis for defining who you are as a person. Most media outlets have an agenda and channel false or fake news or ideas about how you should live your life. There's channels like MTV, for example, and some of the movies that you watch. There are subtle messages that they try to portray to unsuspecting people if you don't really dig deep and find out the agendas behind them. And your family background also doesn't have to determine how far you go in life. There's more than enough examples of successful people who came from poor families. It takes a decision to turn your situation around and set a new direction for your family. And advice we get from peers in most cases is based on their personal experiences and may not always apply to your own life. It's therefore not a good basis for evaluating what your life is about or who you must become. Peer groups are one of the biggest influences on your life, so you must surround yourself with the right people. Also, history has shown numerous times that your cultural background or skin color doesn't have to stop you from doing great things. Former US President Barack Obama is a good example. He became the first black president in the United States in the year 2008. Whatever your situation might be, you don't have to let your skin color define who you can become. And where you come from does not define how far you can go in life. Strive Masiyiwa from Zimbabwe, which is a struggling third world country, is today a global business icon worth over $1 billion. He also now sits on the board of Netflix, a huge milestone in the Zimbabwean context. And we also have Jesus Christ himself, who came from Nazareth, considered one of the lowliest cities in his time, but he changed the world forever through his ministry here on earth. Colonel Sanders had his breakthrough with KFC in his 60s after years of struggle and being fired from jobs he held. The same applies with Abraham Lincoln, who ran for various political posts and lost until he eventually succeeded in becoming the president of the United States. Feelings are constantly changing. As I mentioned before, they are powerful communicators, but are not reliable sources of truth. That is why major decisions should be made purely on emotions. Until you get past these perceptions of what defines you as a person, you'll constantly feel inadequate. Yet the truth is that you are whole just as you are. You might also be constantly miserable when you fail to measure up to other people's expectations of what you are supposed to be. That's a stressful way of living. You might be wondering then, what is it that you should base your identity on? That's a good question. Before we get to that, reflect on what has been the biggest influence on how you see yourself. How have you defined yourself all along? When someone asks you who you are, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And so I have an action item for you, the identity assessment download to reflect on your life and understand what's shaped your identity to this point. Again, take your time. There's no need to rush through it. What's important is that you get to understand the truth about who you are, however long it takes. So remember to go to motivatedtoinspire.com/training, click on Identity Demystified under week 1, then video 2 to access the downloads for this lesson. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next video.